Morning.
Morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great.
Good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's now 10 a.m. and with our agenda posting, we invited members of the public to view a broadcast of the executive committee meeting, which is live at www.youtube.com/State Bar of Texas. We also provided instructions on how to sign up to speak at today's meeting. Sign-ups to speak remotely were available until 5 p.m. Central Standard Time yesterday. Members of the public will speak under agenda item 3. We have one member of the public speaking at a later time, and those members of the public joining remotely will remain in the Zoom room until it is their turn to speak. Please note this meeting will be recorded and the recording will be made available to the public. At this time, I call on our Executive Director, Trey Apfel, for the roll call.
Director Baruch.
Here.
Director Benish.
Here.
Director Bullard.
Here.
Director Cantu. Here. Director Clark.
Here.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Harrison.
Here.
Director Huddleston. Director Kroger.
Here.
Senior Justice Learman has an excused absence. Director McDonald.
Here.
Director Naylor. Director Pratt. Director Ritter. Director Smith. Director Tisdale.
Here.
Director Toby. Director Wooten.
Here.
Madam President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Apfel. At this time, we would like any members of the public who have signed up to speak. Any member of the public joining us in person who wishes to speak should sign a blue sign-in card and return it to staff. If there's a specific topic of discussion or agenda item you would like to speak on, please list that on the card. If any members of the public have signed up to speak remotely, you will remain in the Zoom waiting room until it's your turn to speak, and I will address you to indicate when you may begin. Each speaker will be given 3 minutes to speak, and we will notify you when your time is complete. I believe, is there anybody from the public? Not at this time. So during the remainder of the meeting, if there are board members or staff who wish to speak, please approach the podium and I will let you know when it's your turn to speak. And at this point, the public comment period is now finished except for one public member that's speaking later on. So at this point, I want to call again on Executive Director Trey Apfel to give the Executive Director report.
Thank you, President Tisdale. Good morning, everyone. I want to update you on some travels, meetings, and activities that we've had going on. First of all, report the great success of our local bar leaders conference held in Houston about a month and a half ago now. That helps us fulfill our statutory requirement to encourage the formation and activities of local bar associations in accordance with section 81.0125 of the government code. Also, I attended some of the National Association of Bar Executives meetings, National Conference of Bar Presidents meetings, and Southern Conference of Bar Presidents meetings in Denver last month. These were great meetings where much meaningful discussion and idea sharing was held with other unified bar leaders. Texas continues to be a national leader in bar association work, and that includes our state bar staff members serving in various leadership roles on a national level. I want to update you on some of our staff's current leadership positions to give you a sense of the scope of our involvement on that national level, beginning first with Erica Rodriguez, our MCLE director, who was recently elected president of the Continuing Legal Education Regulators Association, also known as CLE Reg, during their annual conference in San Antonio. Lowell Brown, our communications director here at the bar, is serving as chair of the National Association of Bar Executives Communications section this year. So in this role, he serves also as an ex officio member of the NABI Board of Directors. He also serves as vice chair of the NABI Bylaws Committee. Next is Virginia Izaguirre, our Director of Program Planning for Texas Bar CLE. She is currently serving her second year as an elected director to the board and executive committee of ACLEA, or ACLEA, which is the Association for Continuing Legal Education. Sharon Sandel, our Law Practice Resources Division Director, has joined Virginia, having recently been elected to the board and executive committee of ACLEA. Tracy Jarrett, our Chief Financial Officer, is serving on the audit committee of the National Association of Bar Executives. Patricia McConico, our Texas Bar Journal managing editor and website director, serves on the NABI Digital Engagement Committee. And then lastly, Corey Squires, our Director of Research and Analysis, is serving on the NABI Compensation and Benefits Committee. So I'm very proud of the work that our staff puts in and the leadership roles that they occupy and continue to use to engage organizations and bar associations throughout the country. So they are leaders in their own right. So please congratulate them with me. Thank you all. Next, I want to point of personal privilege. I want to congratulate our own President, Cindy Tisdale. She was called upon to speak at the Advanced Family Law CLE program in San Antonio last month. And she was also going to give some welcoming comments to the, Cindy, 1,900 attendees that were there and present. And as she was being introduced by her longtime friend and colleague, Chris Nicholson, she thought that the introduction was going rather long and rather lengthy and rather detailed. And she, in her own mind, she's thinking, we need to move this along. Chris, I'm ready to talk. But Chris and the family law section family, literally family, they awarded Cindy with the 2023 Dan Price Award from the State Bar Family Law section. And that award highlights Cindy's accomplishments in Texas family law, as well as her impact on the section, and it is well deserved. So President Tisdale. All right, next up, talking about annual reports of the State Bar. We are finalizing the new State Bar and CDC annual reports. Those resources will be available to you in board effect in time for the September board meeting. They will also be available to the public on the State Bar website. We're also working on the new volunteer and staff guide, which will be published later in the fall. A little update on our law center, on the building. Our facility staff, led by Michael DeLeon, continues to do a great job of maintaining our facilities and our building. To highlight one example, in August, we replaced the building's fire sprinkler pump. This is a massive, basically, engine that's activated in the event of an emergency to deliver water to our sprinkler system above and around the fire. Because the work required full evacuation of the building, our staff worked remotely that day while the work was being successfully completed. Michael and his team worked mostly behind the scenes and underground and in the parking garage and in the elevator shaft and places that you and I don't typically get to see. But we want to acknowledge that their jobs are vital to our mission at the bar and we appreciate them. And Michael's team includes Michael Sloan and Sylvia Ramon, and they just do a fabulous job. Sonia Hoskins, our chair of our Facilities and Equipment Subcommittee, will have a more detailed report at our board meeting at the end of this month, because I want to update the board on some additional accomplishments that we've made here at the Law Center. So very important information that our board typically doesn't get to concern themselves with, but it is part of our role in making sure that we are transparent and we're keeping everyone up to date and apprised as to what's going on. On the Texas Board of Legal Specialization front, I want to update you on some news there. House Bill 2384 passed this past session by the 88th legislature, mandated the creation of a new specialty area in judicial administration. TBLS is now working with the Supreme Court to develop standards for the certification, with a goal of administering the first exam in October of 2025. So looking ahead, the next attorney certification exams are scheduled for October 2nd and 3rd at the AT&T Conference Center here in Austin. Also, TBLS is moving forward with the creation of 2 short videos concerning the importance of board certification. One video will be directed to non-board certified attorneys on why being board certified is beneficial to their practice. The other video will focus on the public and why choosing a board certified attorney is important. These videos will be incorporated into the TBLS website, and the video focusing on the public will also be made available to board certified members to use on their respective websites. And the videos are expected to be completed in November or December. And Madam President, that completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Apple. Are there any comments from directors? Seeing none, we'll move on to my report. I'm going to briefly just kind of highlight some of the things I've been up to since we last spoke and last saw each other. I attended the Tarrant County Bar Association meeting. I think that's every president coming in, that's usually the first speaking engagement is at the Tarrant County Bar. Laura, you're shaking your head. So we always speak there first. I also spoke at the local bar leaders conference in Houston, the Tarrant County Family Law Bar. I attended the National Conference of Bar Presidents meeting and ABA meeting in Denver. The family law section, as Trey said, I spoke at the advanced family law section and was very happily surprised by that award, by the way. I spoke at the Texas Tech Law School orientation. I spoke at the section chair orientation. I attended the TMC reception in Fort Worth. I spoke to the Traffic Lawyers of Texas in Houston, the Taylor County Bar Association in Abilene. I attended the Judicial Conference in Houston this week and spoke yesterday at the Texas Bar Foundation luncheon at the Judicial Conference there in Houston. So that's a sprinkling of what I've been up to. I want to update you on our new Texas delegate to the ABA. As you know, we have Texas lawyers involved in leadership roles in other organizations on the local, state, and national level, and one of those being the ABA. After a maximum of 9 years, Kim Askew has been succeeded as her term at the ABA by retired Judge Laura Livingston as the state delegate at the ABA House of Delegates. Kim is a longtime member of the House, having previously served as the delegate for the ABA section of litigation and the Dallas Bar Association. She continues ABA service as the delegate for the American Law Institute. Judge Livingston assumed the mantle of the Texas delegate following the ABA's 2023 annual meeting on August 8th in Denver. She's eligible to serve up to three-year terms or 9 years, as Ms. Askew did. State delegates are elected by eligible ABA members in that state. So Judge Livingston is representing lawyers of Texas generally and not the state bar as an entity. We're very grateful to Kim Askew for her service and to Judge Livingston for her service to this profession. So thank them both. I want to thank them both. So as you know, the State Bar puts on a free CLE before our board meetings, and that's going to continue for solo and small firm practitioners. We're going to host an afternoon of free CLE on September the 28th in Fort Worth. I want to thank Kimberly Naylor, Kay Browning, Joshua Weaver, Chad Baruch, and Kenan Wooten for joining me as speakers at that CLE. Among other things of getting free CLE, they're going to learn about State Bar programs, resources, get a tutorial on generative AI, and hear the updates on the U.S. Supreme Court and new laws affecting family law and litigation. Moving on to I want to highlight as part of our approved 23-24 budget, the State Bar has contributed $250,000 to the Sharon Crowley Lawyer Wellness Trust, and I'm very proud of that fact. The trust provides an opportunity for Texas attorneys who have experienced they have addiction issues or mental health challenges, and who are without resources be able to pay for the help they need and the treatment they need. In many cases, treatment will allow them to begin the process of reclaiming their lives, their families, and their practice, and their standing in the community. In other cases, there's some cases this treatment saves lives. So I'm very proud of the fact that the State Bar is continuing to fund these efforts and help the Sharon Crowley Memorial Trust. We also continue to encourage others to donate. If you feel so moved, please go online to the SharonCrowley.org. And you too, I would love to see 100% participation from the board individually, whatever you can give, even if it's $20, $50, I'd love to see participation from the board this year, giving to that trust. So the State Commission on Judicial Conduct appointment, we have an appointment coming up to this committee, which is the Texas state agency responsible for investigating allegations of judicial misconduct. The appointment process is outlined in the Texas Constitution and the 2017 Supreme Court of Texas order. The State Bar President and the chair of the board must confer and nominate one or more qualified lawyers for each position to be filled. The nominee shall be published to the board and officers of the State Bar at least 15 calendar days prior to the meeting of the board of directors, at which time they will be considered. Additional nominations for position may be made by any board member by informing the president and the chair in writing no later than 10 calendar days before the board meeting. Chair Wooten and I have discussed this, and we are nominating past president Sylvia Berenda Firth of El Paso for the board's consideration. We're excited to have someone of her qualifications interested in serving on this commission. We will be sending a notification to the board soon about this nomination as required by the Supreme Court order. The board will consider this appointment on September 29th in Fort Worth at our meeting. So a little bit about my goals for this year. As you know, one of my goals this year is to create a more efficient system for attorney vacation letters. I've asked the Law Practice Management Committee, chaired by Greg Sampson, to look at this issue and make recommendations on how we can get this accomplished. The committee will meet on September 22nd, and they will be on the agenda. And this will be on their agenda, of course. They're looking at it for us. So at this time, I would like to consider and approve the, I'm going to look, we have to approval of the minutes. Let me get back over to here. So at this time, has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? And is there a motion at this point to approve the minutes of the April 4th, 2023 meeting?
Move to approve.
I have a motion for Director Toby. Is there a second? A second from Director Pat. Is there any comments? No? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed. The motion carries. At this time, I want to talk about consider and discuss approval of additional members to the AI task force and work group. Included in your materials is a roster and of the members that we want to add to this work group and the title of the AI task force. The board of directors approved the formation of the AI work group during our meeting on June 20th. The formation of the AI work group illustrates the board's commitment to staying in the forefront of the technological advancements and their implications for the legal profession. The AI work group has already convened twice on July 20th and then again on August 30th. And they're rolling and doing a lot of work already. These meetings have been very productive with lively discussions on which the members identified numerous issues. that are relevant to Texas lawyers. These meetings have provided a solid foundation, of course, for the next steps of what we want to do. So building upon the work that the AI work group has done, this summer, I am proposing that the AI work group transition into a more formalized structure as the task force for responsible AI in the law. This evolution will enable the group to engage in more comprehensive and targeted endeavors. In your meeting materials that you have, you will find the detailed proposal for the task force for responsible AI in the law. This proposal includes the mission on the task force, which focuses on investigating the impact of AI on the legal profession in Texas and how legal practitioners can leverage AI responsibly to enhance the delivery of legal services in Texas while also upholding the integrity of the legal system. The materials also include the roster, as I said before, of the members and the suggested new members of this task force. I'm pleased to announce that the response to the AI work group has been tremendous and enthusiastic. Many lawyers have expressed their willingness to serve on the task force, and I get numerous emails asking about that. This enthusiasm underscores the legal community's recognition of the significance of the AI in our profession. While members have been added to the group, we've also really tried to maintain a manageable size of this work group while ensuring a representation of diverse viewpoints on technology and the practice of law. Regrettably, I was unable to include all volunteers, but I'm grateful to everyone who has expressed interest in this work group. Among the new members on the proposed roster are lawyers with expertise in AI technology, a district court judge, a former president of the paralegal division, a software engineer with insights into AI development, a law professor with specialized research in AI's legal applications, and the CEO of a legal technology company. The task force encompasses a diverse range of perspectives on technology and experience in the practice of law, and I'm really looking forward to their innovative ideas and what comes out of this task force, as I'm sure all of you are. So next, I'm going to give you an update on the Building Planning Special Committee. Sylvia has an excused absence. Ms. Firth, Director Firth has an excused absence, or not Director Firth, Ms. Firth has an excused absence. So I'm going to give her report. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. So we have, I apologize, I'm flipping back and forth here. At this point, I make a motion to change the name of the AI work group to the, right here. I'm sorry, I apologize, and change its title to the AI Task Force. This motion is coming from a member of the group, so there's, oh, sorry, I do need a second. I've made a motion. Is there a second to change the name to the AI Task Force? Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we're going to, Ms. Firth has an excused absence, so I'm going to give her report on the building committee task force. So this is going to be an update, of course, on the 1450 Lavaca building next door, and we have one action item to recommend today. We're continuing to work on pre-construction activities right now. We're going to describe some of those to you today and our recommendation to approve a construction manager at risk, or a CMAR as it's commonly referred to. The staff has been working with our architect on schematic design, which looks at spatial details and various systems within the building. They will also be looking at interior design concepts as well to start getting ideas for developing kind of the look and feel of the inside of the building. Staff will be meeting with the Austin Historical Commission's Architect Committee next week to start work on getting approval of this design. They have also been working with the Austin Energy Green Building staff to comply with their requirements that are needed for the site permit. We want to push a lot of these pre-construction activities forward while we begin to kind of ramp up our fundraising activities so that when we have the money to begin construction, we'll be ready to go with all of the other elements of this project. Speaking of fundraising, The staff has begun working with our fundraising consultant, FBC Generosity Experts, to put together a plan for fundraising. They've had initial meetings to start work on developing a communications plan and a methodology for how the State Bar will fundraise. We're also still considering alternatives for the preferred tax deductible fundraising mechanism, and we'll report on that as soon as we have more information. The next thing on our agenda to discuss is the selection of the construction manager at risk, or CMAR. As we have said previously, the CMAR is a construction manager that works with the architect and the owner to look over the building design plans, and they will give us feedback on those plans. They will give us a guaranteed maximum price for the cost of the entire construction project. Getting them involved early like this helps us kind of control the costs of the construction project. And the CMAR is the group that will ultimately do the construction of 1415 Lavaca. For the past few months, we've been working on the process for acquiring a CMAR for our project. We worked with construction lawyer Jeff Chapman and to help us develop our research and selection process. The State Bar issued an RFQ and subsequently an RFP to 18 construction companies. 2 firms responded and had interviews with the staff about their services. Both firms were very qualified. They were questioned on their experience with historic projects, project phasing to work with us while we fundraise, safety procedures, experience with our architect, city right-of-way, and challenges that they see related to this project. After a thorough review, the firm of Rogers O'Brien was selected. Their materials are included, of course, on Board Effect and your materials for today. The building committee voted to approve the staff recommendation, and we are presenting that recommendation today. Rogers O'Brien stood out in a few major areas, and I want to highlight those for you. Their overall cost for the project ended up being a better value for us. Their projected completion schedule was shorter. They had historic preservation consultant on their team, extensive experience with this architect. They have worked on law schools, a local bar, and even done work on the state capitol. We had a great comfort level with this team, and we will be working closely with them for 2 years. So we feel like they will communicate well with us and make more of a partnership between the 2 of us. The cost for these pre-construction services is $40,000. We will look at contracting for general conditions construction operating costs at a later time, but we will work with them on a phased construction approach to align with our fundraising efforts, meaning the project will be scheduled in such a way that we progress based on the money that we receive. This is so we don't overcommit to spending money, of course, that we don't have in hand. So at this time, on behalf of the Building Planning Special Committee, we recommend that the Executive Committee approve the firm of Rogers O'Brien as the construction manager at risk for the State Bar of Texas. So at this point, there's a motion. Is there a second on this motion? Director Wooten is second. Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? The motion carries. Now, at this point, I'm going to sit down and allow Director Wooten, Chair Wooten, to come up and give her report. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Tisdale, and good morning, everybody. This report will be pretty brief. You may remember that when I was running for chair, I talked about wanting to have community engagement opportunities for our board. And our first community engagement opportunity is actually modeled after something TYLA started, the TYLA's Bookshelves in Courtrooms program. So what we're going to do, as you've probably seen in the communications about our board meeting, is encourage everybody to bring donated children's books to the meeting. These can be used, they can be new, whatever you want to do. And Judge Wilkinson has graciously agreed to come to our meeting in Fort Worth, collect those books from us and distribute them to courthouses in the community. So thank you to TYLA for that great idea and for letting me borrow it for our first community engagement project. There will be more projects like this in the future. And if anybody has suggestions for what we do in the future as a community, please let me know. And speaking of books and sticking to that theme, at the September meeting, I'm going to give each director a book that I think speaks to some of our roles as board members and to unity and diversity. And I'll tell you more about that when we meet, but it's not law related, but hopefully you'll appreciate the read. So at the September board meeting, we're also going to introduce the new directors to the communication initiatives that we've all heard about and been encouraged to engage in our local bar associations. Specifically, the directors, as we've been asked before, are going to be asked to reach out to the local bar associations and offer the CLE presentations that we know and love, maximize your state bar membership and improve your practice, and also the 30 benefits and 30 short minutes presentation. So if you haven't given these presentations already, of course, welcome everybody to do that. And we're going to encourage the new members, like I said, to do the same thing. In Board Effect, as in prior years, we have the communications folder where we can find bar contacts, copies of PowerPoints, and a lot of available handouts so that it makes it really easy for us to engage in the outreach that we've all been encouraged to engage in. I've also been asked to remind you, you might imagine who asked me, that Board Effect is there to increase efficiency and reduce printing costs and give all of us a single place to go for secure online access to everything we need to fulfill our duties as directors. Along those lines, this is a gentle reminder to make sure that you RSVP to meetings and surveys there and to access your meeting materials there in the Board Effect portal. Thank you very much. This is from me and for others who I'm sure will appreciate our use of Board Effect. Finally, at the September board meeting, though it seems really soon, I'm going to go ahead and request that any second-year director interested in running for chair contact me before the January board meeting, according to board policy, to express that interest. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Are there any comments? Well, I've made my first mistake of many. I had asked for a motion to approve the change of the AI work group to the AI task force. I failed to ask for approval of the additional members that are set in on the task force in your Board Effect. So at this time, I want to make a motion for approval of the additional members of the AI work group, which is now going to be the AI task force. And I have the motion. Okay. Okay. So I've made the motion. Is there a second to approve the additional members to the AI task force? Director Pratt seconds. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Also, at this time, I would like to ask that I want to make a motion that the AI task force also be recognized in addition as the task force for responsible AI. And so it will, okay.
Exactly.
So that's my motion. Is there a second to that motion? Director Cantu seconds. Is there any discussion? No discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from President-elect Mr. Benish.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Man, that was lame. Let me try that one more time. Let the record reflect. That was lame. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all. May it please the committee. I am honored to deliver my first report as president-elect and honored to be part of this august body and honored, most importantly, to serve at the pleasure of the president of the State Bar, Cindy Tisdale. A few items in my general report that I'd like to cover. I have not gone to nearly so many activities and events, nor should I, as President Tisdale, but I've been to a few since being sworn in at the annual meeting earlier this summer. On July 21st and 22nd, I did attend the local bar leaders conference at the Westin Galleria in Houston. A big part of what we do can be made more effective by virtue of the network of relationships that we build with leaders of the local bars, the affinity bars, the young lawyers, the specialty bars. And so this was a great opportunity to build relationships or to see again, in my case, many who I had seen over the previous months. And it was tremendously enjoyable. On July 28th, I had breakfast with University of Texas Law School Dean Bobby Chesney to discuss a variety of issues, not just those that are relevant to UT Law School, such as Longhorn Village, student housing that's planned for UT Law School, but other issues that are of relevance to law schools in Texas and beyond, such as the continued use of LSAT scores in identifying students to attend, and the continued revision and tweaking to the format of the bar exam. With another wave of that coming. And so it was a useful pit stop, and I intend to do the same on as often as I can with the deans of the other law schools around the state of Texas as I travel. On August 2nd through 7th, I attended the National Conference of Bar Presidents, the Southern Conference of Bar Presidents, and the ABA annual meeting in Denver, Colorado. It was a great opportunity for me to connect with my class of presidents-elect from the Southern Conference of Bar Presidents, and we made quite a strong connection and kind of hung out together much of the remainder of the conference. I have to tell you, I was shocked, I say, to be selected as the class photographer. What's with that? So we have set up a line of communication, and we're communicating on a regular basis by email. More on that. I did want to highlight 3 outstanding women lawyers that was my privilege to meet and see them honored during the course of the meeting. It was a great opportunity for me to meet Lubna Shuja, who is the president of the Law Society, which is the bar of England and Wales, that boasts 220,000 solicitors in membership. And she kindly invited us to send a representative, either it will be me or Cindy or perhaps my successor in 2025, when that bar celebrates its 200th anniversary. So look forward to the opportunity to do that. We'll flip a coin or two over who gets that trip. It also was my pleasure to be present at the presentation of the Margaret Brent Women Lawyers of Achievement Awards, which is a big deal that the ABA does annually. And I was pleased to see that one of the deserving attorneys receiving the award is an attorney from Texas. Yvette Ostalaba with Sidley Austin in Dallas received an award, and it was a wonderful opportunity for the executive team to be able to spend a moment with her in connection with that. I was also asked to present the American Lawyer Auxiliary Teacher of the Year Awards. And I will tell you, I was asked only because I enjoy a somewhat familiar relationship with the outgoing president of the American Lawyers Auxiliary, Jennifer Benish. And so I was asked to present those awards. The ALA is a spousal auxiliary of the American Bar. And again, as with the Margaret Brent Awards, one of the recipients for the National Teacher of the Year Awards was not only from Texas, but is a licensed lawyer and stays up on her CLE and is an active and in good standing member of the bar, Sue Ellen Perry, who is a high school teacher at Henderson High School in East Texas. And so it was a pleasure to be there to present her with that award. On August 30th, I attended the Austin Save the Date reception for the Texas Minority Council program, a wonderful program. Both of the co-chairs for the Texas Minority Council were in attendance at the Austin event, Shannon Quadros and Marcus Brown. I do want to give a shout out to Chair Kennan Wooten. Kennan and her law firm hosted that reception in one of their large conference rooms, and it was a wonderful event. So thank you, Chair Wooten, for hosting that. Finally, I'm not going to we're not going to preview for you where I'm going to be traveling this fall, but I did want to mention I'm going to be making a trip to celebrate with 100,000 of my closest friends in Tuscaloosa, Alabama on Saturday. Tomorrow night, Jennifer and I will enjoy dinner with Tom Perry and his wife, Melinda. He is my counterpart in Alabama. He's the president-elect of the Alabama State Bar. And so that'll be a blast. And then on Saturday before the game, I'll be meeting with and tailgating with Brandon Buck, who is the president of the Alabama State Bar. I'll not discuss the balance of Saturday because it'll be far less pleasurable than the items I just described to you, I suspect. Let me go ahead and turn, if I may, to the Budget Committee update. One of the responsibilities that the president-elect of the bar carries is chairing the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee is going to have its first meeting, and I'm speaking of the 24-25 budget. Its first budget meeting will be on Tuesday, September 12th. next week. The committee is going to discuss the State Bar's budget process and the timeline for preparation of the fiscal year 24-25 budget. Budget package will be furnished to the State Bar's divisions and department directors on October 2nd, and then a deadline completion of October 13th, so 11 days on that. Once budget data is received, the finance division will go ahead and prepare and analyze the budget, and then the budget process will continue to include a step for review of compliance with the State Bar's limitations as set forth both by the Keller and the McDonald opinions. And the budget committee will continue prior budget committee's leadership initiatives in reviewing the State Bar's financial trends and projections. The committee will meet again in December here at the Texas Law Center. Division and department directors will attend that meeting and provide information about their areas of the budget. During the meeting, the committee will finalize a proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget for presentation to the executive committee and to the board for their respective January 2024 meetings. And that's all I have, and thus endeth my report. Madam President.
Thank you, President-elect Benish. Are there any comments from directors? Seeing none, I'll now call upon immediate past President Laura Gibson for her report.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I want to talk to you first about the succession planning toolkit, and thanks to our executive director, Trey Epfel, for mentioning that program in his column, his executive director report last month and again this month. It's obviously something that we really need, and not enough lawyers have taken advantage of it. We unveiled it right at the time of our annual meeting on June 21, which was the longest day in the year, the solstice, thinking if lawyers are typical procrastinators, maybe they would take the longest day of the year to take the time to designate a custodian attorney. You remember the toolkit's been unveiled. It's available at texasbar.com/succession toolkit. It's a one-stop shop for anybody who needs to designate a custodian and figure out what to do to plan ahead to prevent their partners or loved ones from having to deal with the closure of their law firm in the event they pass away or become disabled before they do so. The toolkit was created by the Law Practice Management Committee and is part of the Law Practice Management Program. As I said, we've been publicizing it using our Texas Bar Journal, and it was also picked up in Law 360. We'll continue to spread the word about the importance of this program. I'm disappointed to report that despite all of our efforts, we only have 986 lawyers out of 110,000 lawyers who have designated a custodian. So we need to do a better job of making sure people get the word out. The Advanced Commercial and Consumer Law course is coming up later this month, and Greg Sampson and Sharon Sandel are speaking on succession planning at this program here in Austin. The director of that course, I'm sad to report, Jerry Jarza, this is a hard last name, Jarzombek. I don't know him. I understand he was a Fort Worth solo practitioner, and he was the course director, and he passed away unexpectedly this summer. And Greg and Sharon were asked to step in to do the presentation on succession planning, and it will be titled the Jerry Jarzombek In Memoriam Presentation on Succession Planning. I hope that Jerry was one of the 986 lawyers who designated a custodian, but it's a unfortunate reminder to us all that while we think we might have plenty of time to take care of business, obviously Jerry was planning a succession, he was planning to speak on succession planning. We need to put our words into action and designate if you're a solo practitioner. Our efforts were also recognized nationally. We were awarded the Stephen, and I can't pronounce this name either, Lalico Memorial Award for Professional Excellence from the Association of Continuing Legal Education, which is known by the acronym ACLEA, for our succession planning toolkit And our webcast filed, Don't Wait designate that Greg Sampson, who is the current chair of the Law Practice Management Committee, and I reported earlier this bar year. The award is given to an organization for its outstanding commitment to the public interest through its programming or publications, and among other criteria that the ACLEA considers is the effective use of an organization's resources and the impact on the public. And the cost of the work we've done for succession planning is negligible, given that it's largely volunteer efforts and it's all electronically available. And obviously, just the fact that one lawyer has designated a custodian will save his or her family uncountless hours of stress and distress in having to deal with the lawyer's return of the client's files to their clients and to close that practice out. Since I passed the baton to Cindy on June 23, I have had several outreach opportunities, thankfully not as much as President Tisdale or President-elect Benish. I attended the advanced real estate course in San Antonio from July 12th through the 15th. I was asked to speak during that program while I was president, but their program didn't begin until July. So I had that opportunity. I also attended the local bar leaders conference in Houston, and my office is literally 5 minutes from the Galleria. So it was the most efficient travel I had the entire time I've been involved as president of the state bar. That was July 21st and 22nd. And as others have mentioned, that really is the recruiting ground for people who will become board members like yourself. So if you haven't been to the local bar leaders, it's a wonderful program to visit with all the TYLA members and local bar leaders from across the state. And, we encourage them all to get involved. Some people in the past have argued or suggested that this board is an invitation-only organization, and that is very, very far from the truth. But to the extent people think they need an invitation, all of us extended invitations during that conference to get more involved and to run for a board position. And I think we've recruited a couple of candidates who I know are already collecting signatures. I also had the privilege of attending the ABA annual meeting and the National Conference of Bar Presidents in Denver. And I will say, if you ever attend a meeting in Denver that involves the Denver Convention Center, wear flat shoes. Just saying, you go a mile before you get to the first room. So it was a great program. As Trey has said, Texas truly is the leader among all leaders in the National Conference of Bar Presidents. I can't tell you the number of times where we were talking about issues of import to all lawyers and to the public, and people looked around and said, "Where is Trey? Where is Trey? What's Texas doing?" That refrain was heard over and over. What is Texas doing on this issue? So we can be very proud of the fact that Texas is a leader among leaders, and we need to continue our efforts. And I'm so happy that all of our team members on the State Bar staff are taking such an interest in leadership positions across the country. And then finally, I had the opportunity to speak at the Thurgood Marshall School of Law orientation on a panel with TYLA Chair Ashley Emmel and TYLA board member Tim Davis on August 14. And I don't know why that campus is so hard to find, and you cannot find the address of it on the internet. But once you get it, put it in your contacts so that you can go again. And those law students were so hungry and so excited to hear about all of the scholarship opportunities, mainly that the TYLA can provide to law students. And I know we've got a lot of people calendaring that deadline for submitting their scholarship applications. And Madam President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any comments from directors? Seeing none, we'll move on to the Nominations and Elections Subcommittee. Immediate Past Chair Baruch, are you making the presentation?
Yes. Thank you. I apologize for what will be the longest nominations and elections report of the year. I also want to note that while we were sitting here, I did log on to the Sharon Crowley Trust and make a donation because Charlotte Baruch raised a boy who knows how to follow directions. I would encourage all of you to join. All right, we have a general report and several action items. We first started a discussion when we met during annual meeting about whether to retain paper balloting. I think ultimately the consensus was about 20% of our votes still are cast by paper ballot. And now is probably not the time to do anything that might diminish the percentage of lawyers who end up voting in our elections. And so we decided, at least for now, to continue with paper ballots, but also continue to monitor that decision on an annual basis and check those percentages. We identified a list of somewhere between 35 and 40 lawyers from across the state to contact concerning their interest in running for president-elect. Of course, we put the word out in a variety of ways that people can nominate others, that it's not just our group that nominates. People can express self-interest in the position, but we ended up with about 35 or 40 people. Past President Gibson and I called each one of those people. As is typical in every year, far more said no than yes for various reasons. A number have young children and the timing is poor. We had 2 this year who told us they thought their window had closed because they were too old to serve. So just various reasons, but this year was really heavy on the nose. And we had several people who told us yes initially, and then as the process went on a little bit, backed out. So we ended up with only 4 people to interview this year. Fortunately, all 4 of them were absolutely outstanding candidates. So we were very fortunate in that respect. We also made a decision as a committee, and this was at the suggestion of our president-elect. As some of you know, there's an incident. 2 lawyers were on a hunting trip last year and they met for coffee in Billings, Montana. And of course, President-elect Benish drove 2,800 miles each way to join them and campaign. No, this never happened. Somebody in the back is going, "Are you kidding me?" No, but to his credit, President-elect Benish, raised the issue of, are we going to have people concerned about saying yes because they think they, have to do every year what I did this year to get elected in sort of a unique post-COVID environment? And so when we reached out to them, past President Gibson and I told them that the committee was really only interested in talking with people who at least were open to the idea of discussing whether to condense or shorten the out of office campaign period. And all of our candidates expressed a willingness at least to have that conversation. This is, of course, a large county year. So we looked at potential nominees from the metropolitan areas, Austin, Dallas, Fort Worth, Houston, San Antonio. We interviewed all 4 candidates here at the Law Center recently. And after deliberation, the committee was nearly unanimous in its selection of the 2 candidates, Denise Schofield of Houston and Santos Vargas of San Antonio. Their bios and interest letters are in your materials. So we're really happy. Although we had a very small group of people to interview, we felt like we ended up with 2 absolutely outstanding candidates. We would be very fortunate to have either one of them lead our bar. On behalf of the Nominations and Elections Subcommittee, I move that the executive committee approve Denise Schofield of Houston and Santos Vargas of San Antonio as the state bar candidates for president-elect in 2024.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries.
Thank you. We also have some amendments to the board policy manual for your consideration. They are included in your committee materials under the nominations tab. The first proposal deals with clarifying our reimbursement policy for president-elect candidates. Last year, at the recommendation of this committee, the board approved an increase to the reimbursement amount given to candidates by $10,000. The extra money was at that time designated to pay for the development of brochure and website expenditures, as those expenses had risen dramatically. This year, the committee discussed broadening the reimbursement policy so that candidates can choose where to direct that extra $10,000 and could use it if they wish for travel expenses, which, as we all know, also have risen rather dramatically. The committee believed it was prudent to permit the candidates some flexibility in how they use that extra money. We propose amending section 2.01.12. As you can see in your packet, the proposal does not increase the overall reimbursement amount. It still caps that amount at $25,000, simply takes out the requirement to direct the extra money toward website and brochure development. This would become, if you approve it, this would become effective immediately to be used in this cycle. On behalf of the Nominations and Elections Subcommittee, I make a motion to approve proposed amendments to section 2.01.12 of the board policy manual as identified in your materials pertaining to campaign expenditures and reimbursement of costs for president-elect candidates.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item deals with board policy regarding candidate forums. Several years ago, the board implemented a policy that requires the bar to conduct at least 2 such forums. Is that right, or is it fora? Fora, yeah. But we'll just stick with forums. They're done to provide a forum for the candidates to promote their candidacies and their positions to the state bar membership. Under this policy, we have hosted fora for the last 2 years, 22 and 23, one in March and the other in April. They've been publicized heavily, advertised by membership e-blasts, full page ad in 2 editions of the Bar Journal, postings at texasbar.com/election, post on Texas Bar blog, and inclusion in the daily news briefing newsletter. Despite these efforts, attendance has been low. Only 60 to 70 people attend per forum, and many of the same people who attend the March forum also attend the April forum. So the benefit of that second forum has been minimal. We would like to amend the policy to remove the mandatory element that we have to conduct at least 2 candidate fora. That gives us flexibility to conduct those at our discretion. Our intent would be to hold 1 virtual candidate forum each year with the option to add a second in any given year in response to demand. On behalf of the Nominations and Elections Subcommittee, I make a motion to approve proposed amendments to section 2.01.09 of the Board Policy Manual as identified in your materials pertaining to President-elect campaign fora.
Thank you. Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion carries.
Thank you. Finally, the committee is looking at the length of the campaign period overall for president-elect candidates. Board policy specifies that the campaign period begins at the conclusion of the September board meeting and ends at the end of April. We have heard from many people that this extended campaign period is too long and may prevent people from being willing to run. We're looking at how we may be able to shorten the campaign period to make it more user-friendly, and may be coming back to you with proposals on that soon. For now, as indicated, we are simply speaking with the 2 selected candidates to see if they are interested in reaching some agreements on those matters. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Past Chair Baruch. Now we'll hear from the Policy Manual Subcommittee from Director Crosley.
Thank you and good morning. The Policy Manual Subcommittee has been considering 2 policy manual matters that involve the terms diversity, equity, and inclusion. The first matter involves the DEI terms used in the title of a section of the board's code of conduct that relates to civility expected of our board members. Section 1.26D of the board's code of conduct ensures board civility by prohibiting discriminatory behavior based on race, ethnicity, religion, color, national origin, age, sex, etc. Using DEI as the title of section 1.26D of our board's code of conduct could lead to misunderstanding about the section's substance, and at a minimum is less accurate than using the title civility for this section. On behalf of the Policy Manual Subcommittee, I move that the proposed revision to the State Bar Board Policy Manual, section 1.26D, as set forth in your materials, be approved.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you. The second matter involves the name of our newest committee. The Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee was created in 2022 and consists of representatives from the state bar sections and committees similar to the Council of Chairs. This committee is focused less on specific projects and looks more broadly on strategic goals for engagement and outreach among the bar and many of its diverse members. When we originally named the committee, we used terminology that is common in this field. Unfortunately, this terminology has led to confusion about the purpose and scope of the committee and the nature of the activities pursued by the state bar. In retrospect, we believe the terminology means different things to different people, and we don't want the good work of the committee to get lost in debates about terminology when everyone can and should be able to get behind the committee's purpose. The purpose of the committee is to increase outreach to and engagement among our membership, particularly with regard to underrepresented groups. Depending on the issue, underrepresented may also mean geographic location, size of the firm, practice area, or other factors. In short, changing the committee's name is in the interest of clarity. We want to be transparent about what the State Bar does do and what the State Bar does not do, and this change will help us achieve that goal. In light of the considerations just mentioned and considering the appropriateness of the proposed name of outreach and engagement, our subcommittee recommends that the executive committee approve our recommendation of this name change. Additionally, as you will see in your materials, we recommend that the executive committee approve changing the associated purpose clause as shown in the materials to comport with the committee name change. It should be noted that the purpose of this committee remains, quote, to develop and promote strategies and best practices for outreach to and engagement of the diverse membership of the State Bar of Texas, close quote. On behalf of the Policy Manual Subcommittee, I move that the proposed revision to the State Bar Board Policy Manual to change the name of the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Committee to the Outreach and Engagement Committee, and also change the associated purpose clause as set forth in your materials be approved.
Thank you. Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion is approved. Thank you, Director Crossley. Next, we'll hear from the Audit and Finance Committee, Director Huddleston.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Some of you may not recognize me because I'm no longer in a medical boot and a scooter, so we've made a little bit of progress. So I'm going to go over a couple of things today. First, we have our first 2024 meeting for the Audit and Finance Committee next Tuesday as well, on September 12th. I'm going to quickly go over the financial statements and activity through June 30th of 2023. The external financial audit, and then the upcoming internal audit plan as well. The first thing you'll notice in your materials starting on page 80 that we have financial information through June 30th of 2023. And we'll get more into this as the year goes on. I'm not going to spend too much time on it right now, particularly because our fiscal year end, for those of you who don't know, is May 31st. And so this is essentially reporting on the first month of activity. And so as we go throughout the year, that'll be building on top of that. So I'll get into that in future meetings a little bit more. But what you'll notice in your materials is that we have a positive variance, and I'm going to try to kind of stay decently high level for you guys in the same way that David Calvillo did. I think he did a really good job of explaining things in a way that's digestible. And so I'm going to continue on that in his footsteps. But in your materials, you'll see that revenues and expenditures both had positive variances. Revenues were higher than we anticipated in the budget by about $293,000, and expenses were lower than we expected by about $100,000. And so overall, we have a positive variance of about $392,000 through June 30th. So hopefully that'll continue throughout July and the rest of the year. I know Tracy has given me a brief update that we had really positive activity through July as well. So like I said, we'll continue on that in the future. But for now, $392,000 1 month positive variance. This is mostly driven by CLE, higher than expected CLE, which is a good thing. There's a detail of that in your materials as well. We kind of include in the first part of the materials overall general fund activity, and then we go down a little bit further into Texas Bar CLE variances as well, since that's the kind of biggest driver in that variance right now. So thank you to Tracy and her team for pulling all of this together. Let's see what else I have here. Just an update on the financial audit. I want to draw your guys' attention to the distinction between an external and an internal audit, which is also something that David did a good job of explaining. An external audit is essentially making sure that the numbers that we're reporting in our financial statements are correct. So the firm Weaver is a CPA firm. They go into the activity that we report throughout the year and validate the numbers to be sure that it's materially correct. And so given we had our year end on May 31st, that is actually ongoing right now with the goal of finishing the external audit by November 20th. And so if we're able to meet that deadline, which we anticipate being able to meet that, then we'll pull together a report for the board in the January or April meeting, depending on how quickly we can pull that together. But expect the results of that. Right now, we're expecting a positive audit with no findings. Similar for the internal audit plan, we engage McConnell and Jones being an external firm as well. Internal audit being essentially making sure that the processes and procedures that we have in place are adequate to report correctly, right? And so we have upcoming 3 different sections that, based on the internal audit firm's risk assessment, are good ones in the upcoming year to make sure that the processes and procedures that they have in place are adequate in order to ensure correct reporting. The first one being finance, the second one being communications, and the third one being the Public Funds Investment Acts. And so that's going to be kicking off, I believe, in October, and will hopefully be wrapped up by December. So a similar timeline, having a final report by February, ideally to have a report out to the board by the January meeting, but if not, then by the April meeting. That's it. Any questions or comments? All right, thanks.
Thank you, Director Huddleston. Are there any comments from directors? Seeing none, at this point, I'll call on Director Toby for the DCAP report.
Thank you, Madam President. We have a lot to cover today. I issue an apology for the length of our board packet, which is about 360 pages long. But we wanted everybody to have the rules themselves, the comments, and to some extent on Rule 309 that we'll talk about in just a minute, a lot of the public discussion, because there was a tremendous amount of interest in this rule. And we're going to hear from a member of the public, Mr. Mike Ware of the Innocence Project of Texas, I think is going to give some public comments here in just a few minutes. So we wanted to give you everything. And if there's questions, obviously along the way, please ask me. The DCAP committee has worked really hard this summer. We have approved 6 rules that were proposed out of 7, and we're going to go through each one of those in order. The board has already approved 6 rules in total coming up, and if they approve as many as 6 or 7 rules at the September board meeting, the plan will be to present this rule resolution to Justice Young and the other 8 justices of the Supreme Court to hold a rules referendum, we hope, in February of next year, which will have a 30-day voting period. And we'll give everybody the opportunity, on this board and the big board to go out and educate the members of the bar about these very important rule proposals. So that's kind of the big picture of where we are today. And one other comment, I think, before I dive into the rules themselves, each of the rules has proposed comments, and many of them engendered a lot of discussion. We are not asking for approval of those. In effect, what's going to happen in that process will be, once the board resolution is passed, the Supreme Court itself can go to the Committee on Disciplinary Rules and Referenda and work those comments out, independent of this committee, the DCAP committee, bless you, Madam Chair, and the big board. So we're not voting on those today. And again, there has been a lot of discussion on a number of the comments that are in the rules themselves. So with that, let me dive in and talk about action item 11-2, that's Rule 3.09. And that has generated, as I mentioned a moment ago, a tremendous amount of discussion. We had a very robust discussion at the DCAP level. We invited several participants to come address the committee, one of which is Mike Ware, who's on the screen. He is the president of the Innocence Project of Texas. He gave a number of very powerful remarks about his thoughts on the rule. And we also heard from Britt Featherston of the federal prosecutors, representing federal prosecutors. They had some concerns about the rule. We also had comments from Jennifer Tharp, Comal County DA, and she spoke very passionately in favor of the rule. And just so you know a little bit of the history, the CDRR has been working on this rule since October of 2021. So we're coming up on 2 years that it's worked on this rule. And the first iteration of the rule was promulgated and published in the Bar Journal a few months later. And after public comment, and there was a lot of it, the decision was made to pull that version of the rule. The CDRR went back to work. They issued 2 different versions of the rule. Neither one was published in the Bar Journal. They went back to the drawing board a 3rd time and published in, I believe it was November of 22, the version of the rule that we're looking at today. So been a lot of work, a lot of comment, a lot of discussion, a lot of compromise. And candidly, we think this is a good rule at this point based upon all of the discussion. And let me just spend a moment talking about what it provides. In 309, the proposed amendments enumerate the duties of a prosecutor in a criminal case. If the prosecutor obtains new and credible information, creating a reasonable likelihood that a convicted defendant did not commit an offense for which the defendant was convicted, then the prosecutor is required to disclose this information to the defendant, to the defense counsel, the tribunal, and the entity that examined and litigates claims of actual innocence in the prosecutor's jurisdiction. And at that point, if the defendant is represented by counsel, they're required to cooperate, and they're also required to obviously cooperate with the court. If the conviction was obtained in another jurisdiction, Section F of the proposed rule requires the prosecutor to disclose the information to the prosecutor in the jurisdiction where the conviction was obtained. So that can be outside of Texas potentially. That prosecutor would then have the duty to go out and disclose it to that court. Again, we think these are good proposals. The DCAP committee voted unanimously in favor of the proposed amendments. So on behalf of the DCAP committee, I move to approve the proposed amendments to Rule 3.09 of the disciplinary rules of professional conduct regarding special responsibilities of a prosecutor.
Thank you. Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion from directors? Yes, Director Ritter.
Is the credibility standard?
Would you come to the podium, please, for the microphone?
I just had a simple question about whether the rule incorporates the credibility standard and whether or not there is any discussion about who makes that credibility determination. Is the prosecutor, if there's any deference to that decision, and I guess whenever agreements might be filed.
So in response to Director Ritter's question, there is a subpart G, and basically what it says is a prosecutor who concludes in good faith that information is not subject to disclosure under paragraph F does not violate this rule, even if the prosecutor's conclusion is subsequently determined to be erroneous. Does that answer your question? If it doesn't, I think it was kind of spot on with what you're asking. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion from directors? At this time, we have a member of the public, Mike Ware, who's the Executive Director for the Innocence Project of Texas. Mr. Ware, you have the floor and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. And I really want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to be heard on what I consider to be a very important matter. I'm the Executive Director of the Innocence Project of Texas, which is a nonprofit that I co-founded back in 2006. And first off, I just want to make it clear that on behalf of the Innocence Project of Texas, that we completely support this new rule in its present form. It's been a long time. It's been almost 2 years now since Professor Vincent Johnson alerted me and the other Innocence Project directors around Texas that this new rule was in the making. And I've been very involved in the process as an outsider, really, but involved in the process for those 2 years. I had an op-ed in the Houston Chronicle published about the rule. Professor Bruce Green, an ethics professor at Fordham Law School, has written an entire law review article about this particular process in this rule that takes it up from the beginning up till almost to where we are today. So I know that the CDRR committee members worked very hard and long, and I very much appreciate that. And like I say, I want to make very clear that the Innocence Project of Texas completely supports this rule. I can also represent, I believe, that the other innocence organizations around the state support this rule. And although I don't represent the criminal defense bar, I can also represent that the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association and its 3,800 members completely support this rule. And I believe that with the positive publicity that we can generate, I believe that this rule, were it to make, the election of the general membership in February, that it would pass. There's 133,772 inmates in the Texas prisons. That doesn't count others serving criminal justice sentences on probation, parole. It doesn't count the felons who have served their sentences but are still under the disability of a felony conviction. And the people who study such things believe and have some data to back up the premise that somewhere between 2 and 6% of people who are convicted and imprisoned are completely innocent. And if you put that to pencil and paper, 133,772 would mean that there's approximately 2,675 innocent people actually imprisoned. That's what this rule is meant to address. It's not intended to address the causes of why they're in prison. It's not intended to address whose fault it is that they are in prison. Although I think many times along the way, the prosecutors took it that way. It's simply to address and give prosecutors ethical guidance as to what to do with the reality that may confront them from time to time, that they have credible information that an innocent person is in prison. The rule requires—
Mr. Ware, your 3 minutes are up. If you could wrap up your statement,
Sure,
please.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
The rule requires disclosure. It's not nearly as robust as the ABA model rule, which has been in effect since 2008, but I'm a realist and I'm going to support it. And I hope it comes to a vote, and I hope it becomes part of our disciplinary rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ware. Are there any other comments from other directors? At this point, all in favor of the directors, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
Thank you. Our next proposed rule change is Rule 4.03. And this is a proposed amendment dealing with lawyers dealing with unrepresented persons. The rule would prohibit a lawyer from giving advice to an unrepresented person other than the advice to secure counsel. If the lawyer knows or reasonably should know that the interests of such a person are or have a reasonable probability of being in conflict with the interests of the client. So it really basically just deals with something I think we all do kind of intuitively, but makes it an ethical rule, which is if we're dealing with somebody who's unrepresented, we can't give them legal advice because we're adverse to them, but we can advise them to go out and get counsel. So This is, I think, a very smart change to the ethical rules. The DCAP committee was unanimous in being in favor of its approval. So on behalf of the DCAP committee, I'd make a motion to approve the proposed amendments to Rule 4.03 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct dealing with unrepresented persons.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion from directors? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
Next rule is 4.04. That's agenda item 11-4. And this is one where we had a lot of discussion at the committee level when there really wasn't that much at the CDRR level. And what Rule 4.04 talks about is it's an amendment that in representing a client, a lawyer who receives a document or electronically stored information and knows that the document or electronically stored information was inadvertently sent shall promptly notify the sender. The committee by a 7-5 vote voted to not approve this rule. And here's some of the reasoning that went into the committee's thought processes. There was a big concern that this puts a higher burden on the receiving lawyer ethically than it would on the lawyer who sent the inadvertent privileged communication. Obviously, there's a Rule 105 that prevents the divulging of client confidential information, but the committee was concerned that this maybe slants that in favor of the sending lawyer versus the receiving lawyer. There was some concern about potential gamesmanship in terms of lawyers on the sending side, sending something out that they intentionally knew would draw a response, and maybe there could be some game playing in litigation. There was also a concern that the receiving lawyer might not really know the intent. Was it truly inadvertent? Was it on purpose? Was it negligent? So there, all these concerns were voiced in the committee. And again, the vote was 7-5 to not approve this rule coming from the CDRR. So the motion will be on behalf of the DCAP committee that the executive committee adopt the recommendation of the DCAP committee to not approve proposed amendments to Rule 4.04 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct regarding respect for the rights of others.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion from directors? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
The next rule is Rule 5.01. That is agenda item 11-5. And the proposed amendments to Rule 5.01 would clarify the duty of lawyers to supervise others within their firms. The proposed rule would require that a lawyer with managerial authority in a law firm make reasonable efforts to ensure that the firm has in effect measures to reasonably assure that all lawyers in the firm comply with the disciplinary rules, and that another lawyer supervised by the lawyer with managerial authority also complies with the rules. This is, in essence, a kind of cleanup from ABA Model Rule 5.1, which basically requires all lawyers in a firm to supervise others. I think the thinking here is that especially in big law firms, it's kind of an unfair standard when you have so many lawyers that really it ought to be somebody with managerial authority who has that duty and scope within what they do on a day-to-day basis. The DCAP committee unanimously approved this proposed amendment. So the motion is on behalf of the DCAP committee is to approve the proposed amendments to Rule 5.01 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct regarding responsibilities of a partner or supervisory lawyer.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion from the directors? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
The next rule for consideration is 5.05. It's agenda item 11-6. These proposed amendments relate to the unauthorized practice of law and remote practice of law. I think these are really important changes for our profession. I think that this rule, as Professor Moss pointed out in his comments, is long overdue in the state and is a welcome one. And basically what the rule says is that the remote practice of law from outside of Texas and the remote practice of law not licensed in Texas from a location in Texas is approved under certain circumstances. In essence, one example would be in-house lawyers who are not necessarily licensed in Texas, but work for a Texas company. And basically, it provides the guidance on how and when a Texas lawyer engaged in the unauthorized practice of law, if the lawyer practices law in multiple jurisdictions without these sorts of guidelines. The CDRR recognized that the changes in technology and mobility have impacted the multi-jurisdictional practice of law and the remote practice of law, and the clarification was needed in our disciplinary rules. And we did get comments from the Unauthorized Practice of Law Committee at our committee meeting, the DCAP committee meeting, that is. We had a robust discussion. We had Chris Lohman, who's chair of the UPL committee, come in and say, from their standpoint, they had some concerns about enforceability of the amendments. They expressed concern about one provision being kind of a subjective standard instead of an objective standard. These comments were made previously to the CDRR, which made the decision to go forward with the rule anyway, and it was approved. The DCAP committee, hearing these concerns, voted by a majority vote to approve the rule. And so on behalf of the DCAP committee, I move to approve proposed amendments to Rule 5.05 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct regarding the unauthorized practice of law and remote practice of law.
Thank you. Coming from a committee, there's no second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
Our next rule, and there's two of them that basically go together, we'll take them separately, is 8.05, which is agenda item 11-7. And in essence, 8.05 and 8.06, which we'll talk about in just a moment, deal with jurisdiction. 8.05 clarifies that a lawyer admitted to practice in Texas is subject to the disciplinary authority in Texas, regardless of where the lawyer's conduct occurs. So if you've got a case out of state, and you do something unethical out of state, Texas still has jurisdiction over the discipline of that situation. It also provides that a lawyer not admitted to Texas is subject to the disciplinary authority of Texas if the lawyer provides or offers to provide any legal services in this state. So obviously the remote practice of law has become much more common, especially as a direct impact of the pandemic. And this rule helps to clarify jurisdiction for those situations. So the DCAP committee unanimously approved this proposed rule. So on behalf of the DCAP committee, I move to approve the proposed amendments to Rule 8.05 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct regarding jurisdiction.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? All directors in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
Our last proposed rule is 8.06. Thank you, immediate past chair Baruch, for the confidence you're showing in me on this last rule proposal. So it's agenda item 11-8, and that one deals with again, jurisdiction. But it's, and it does dovetail in with 8.05, and the two rules basically replace the old rule 8.05. 8.06 clarifies that a lawyer who's admitted to practice in Texas would be subject to the disciplinary authority of Texas, regardless of where the lawyer's conduct occurs. A lawyer who is not admitted in Texas is subject to the disciplinary authority if the lawyer provides or offers to provide any legal services in Texas. And a lawyer may be subject to the disciplinary authority of Texas and another jurisdiction or multiple jurisdictions for the same conduct. So basically, there's no get out of jail free card if you do something in another state and maybe that state's laws approve it, but this state's laws do not. So it just tries to clarify all of these multi-state situations that we have with a modern practice of law, especially since the pandemic. Again, the DCAP committee unanimously approved this rule. So on behalf of the DCAP committee, I move to approve the proposed new rule 8.06 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct regarding choice of law.
Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? All directors in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
Now you may applaud. Before I go to the next agenda item, again, I think a word of thanks for the CDRR. I mean, they've been working on these rules for about 2 years. And it's just, they've done a tremendous amount of work over their monthly meetings. I've watched a couple of them as part of this process, and really a pretty scholarly group, and they do a great job. And it's hard because you do have a lot of differing opinions and interests that go into this rulemaking process. As we heard from Mr. Ware, that rule was not the rule anybody wanted, but it was a great rule in that I think everybody was a little bit unhappy with it. So it probably hits the mark. I also want to thank the DCAP committee for their hard work this summer, because I know right after the annual meeting, we were scheduling the meetings that we had to go through these rules and the processes that I'm going to talk about now. So the next step, obviously, is our board meeting on September 29th. I'll have this very same presentation for these 7 rules that the big board will either approve or not approve, hopefully will approve. But assuming that the board approves the 6 that we've approved here today, that will be a total of 12 rules that we will then petition, again, Justice Young and the other justices in very early October to approve the resolution so that we can have the referendum starting in February, early February, with a 30-day vote period. And that will give us as a board the opportunity to go out and educate 112,000 members of the State Bar of Texas about these rules. And I'm hopeful that we'll get a good turnout. And that's obviously been a subject of a lot of debate here in terms of our board elections, in terms of our president-elect elections, and now in terms of a referendum that, it's got some important material to it. So anyway, that's going to be our next task. So the resolution itself talks about under Government Code 81.0877, we'll ask the Supreme Court to order a referendum on the proposed amendments by the eligible members of the State Bar. That's the first thing. The second thing is the approval of a proposed ballot form and method of voting for the referendum as included on Exhibit A of the resolution that will be distributed to the eligible members of the State Bar in paper ballot form and electronic ballot. The resolution will also cover the proposed schedule, with voting to begin on February 6th and end on March 7th, 2024. And then just a couple of notes about the ballot. We did have, similar to the nominations committee, we had a discussion about, should we do away with paper ballots? Is that a good thing to do at this point? The unanimous opinion of our committee, the DCAP committee, was we need to keep the paper ballots. If 20 to 25% of our bar membership is still using them, I just don't think we're at the position, similar to Chairman Baruch's thought process. I don't think we're at the point where we can potentially cut out 20 to 25% of the, unfortunately, 20% who vote in these elections. So that's our recommendation. Obviously, it'll be up to the Supreme Court to make that decision in terms of whether it's electronic only or electronic plus paper, but that's our thinking of the committee. Again, we think the February start date gives us adequate time with about 3 months to educate the bar on these rules. And there's a great timeline you'll see in your materials that lays out everything that's going to be done in the Bar Journal, everything that we're going to be doing as part of CLEs, and everything that bar staff is doing to try to get the word out about these rules, what they mean, what they say, so that we have an educated vote in February. So with that, my last action item is to, on behalf of the DCAP committee, to approve the following items as contained in the board resolution. Number one, to petition the Supreme Court of Texas to order a referendum on all proposed amendments approved by the State Bar Board. Secondly, the proposed ballot form for a referendum as included in Appendix A of the resolution, and that the ballots be distributed to eligible members of the State Bar of Texas in paper ballot form and electronic ballot. And third, that the referendum begin on February 6th and end on March 7, 2024.
Thank you. Coming from a committee, no second is needed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all directors in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved.
Thank you, Madam President. My last point before I sit down at long last will be just to emphasize the timeline from basically the beginning of October to February. It's outlined in there. As many of you, I'm looking to the DCAP committee to really take a lead on this, but I would love to have as many people in this room and the big board as possible to help us get the word out. This is important. It does impact lawyers on a daily basis in terms of how they practice law. We really do need to do our part to try to educate everybody about the importance of this and hopefully get them to vote in February. So with that, that concludes my report, Madam President.
Good job, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Toby. And I also want to thank the members of the DCAP committee for their hard work and the CDRR. It was a long process, and I want to thank you all for your time. So thank you. So next, and yes, we're going to keep going. We're almost there. I know, but if you know me back from 12 years ago when I was board chair, we don't take breaks. We keep going. So on that note, I will call on Director Bullard for the section representatives to the board general report.
I will continue along the theme of expeditious reports and efficient reports. I'm pleased to report that our sections continue to be active and healthy. The total section membership is up from where it was last year at this time by about 1,878 members. We've had a pretty good increase in membership. In August, our section officers had a new officer orientation in which 77 members attended and got oriented on what they're supposed to do as section officers. And then at the annual meeting in June, we had 29 sections that hosted a CLE and or had an annual membership meeting in conjunction with the annual meeting. One of those annual meetings was by the LGBT law section, and there is a proposed name change for that section that I would like to bring to this committee's attention. At their annual meeting on June 23rd, the membership of the LGBT law section voted to change their name to the LGBTQ plus law section in accordance with their section's bylaws. And during the orientation I just referred to, the new officer orientation, the section of the LGBT section presented the proposed name change to the section chairs for consideration, comments, and recommendation. As per board policy, the chairs voted on and approved the proposed name change. Section representatives subsequently met, then held a meeting and also voted to recommend supporting the proposed name change in its report to the board at the upcoming September Board of Directors meeting. And finally, we had two sections that are proposing bylaw revisions. The real estate probate and trust law section and the judicial section have both submitted proposed revisions to their bylaws for approval by the board at the upcoming September meeting. And that concludes my report, Madam President.
Thank you, Director Bullock. Are there any questions or discussion from directors? Hearing none, we're going to move on. I'd like to call on Justice Young for a report from the Supreme Court.
All right, the theme of expedition stops here. Buckle up. No, I will try to carry that on. Our court calendar, like the bar's calendar, like some of those, sort of a liturgical calendar. Each year, certain seasons come and we do certain things, and we are now at, I don't know what we call this, Advent. I don't know. We're about to see the birth of the term. Our oral arguments start next week. We had our long conference at the end of October. Things were going on over the summer in order to comply with various statutes. A lot of statutes were passed that affect the profession, affect the functioning of the courts. And so we have released a number of rules changes, proposed rules changes, some of which have already taken effect as of now to coincide with September 1st effective date of the relevant statute. I can go through what some of them are, but I think you probably all either know or can easily find what they are. Most of them are terribly boring. So let's skip that unless you have specific questions. Well, I know. I'll have a standing objection to any reference to any rules being boring. They're all important. I will say that. Can we at least agree and find some common ground? Our new law clerk started this past week. We have a very strange, there's so many strange things about our court, really, aren't there? But one of them is that all of the law clerks end together. And then we go through a 2-week period with no law clerks, which makes the building nice and quiet. But things sometimes happen during those 2-week periods as well. And then all of them start together, which means that they don't have the same benefits that I had and others who clerk, where there's a gradual transitioning out. So one law clerk will leave, then the replacement will come, but have the chance to spend some time with the other. That's just not the way we do things. Texas exceptionalism is something we all believe in. I certainly believe in it. But things like that, or the idea that we have this 2-stage briefing process where you don't know whether or not we're going to take your case until after you've done full briefs on the merits. Texas exceptionalism, it's possible that is the most brilliant system and that the other 49 states have not accepted it just because they're so benighted. Anyway, our new law clerks have started. They've started together, all tabula rasa. And so we're at that point of the year where everything is new. All things become new. And I mourn the loss of my law clerks from this past term, as I did the ones before that. This is, as the newest judge on the court, I'm just learning these rhythms of the year, and it's very hard. I'm conservative by nature. I don't like change, especially when I like the status quo. And I usually kind of like the status quo, with the exception of the 2 things that I just mentioned. Let's see. We have a number of direct appeals coming this term, which we usually don't have, and that relates to the same thing as all the rules changes. When a statute is passed and it is held to be unconstitutional by a trial court, there is authorization in our law for it to come directly to us. We have not had many since I have been on the court, but we have 2, a third has been docketed. There may be some more. So it'll be an interesting term with respect to the legislation that has been passed, both rules and cases. And then finally, Justice Lehrman thought that you all would be interested in hearing about our plans for business courts, but we don't really have any yet because we referred that to the Supreme Court Advisory Committee for review. I would encourage all of you and all lawyers and citizens in our state to be aware that that process will be unfolding. Both the business court and the new 15th court will take effect September 1st of next year. So we have a bit of runway, but more than usual. But they're also rather challenging projects. To get a court started and to do it well is no small task. And so I invite all of you and all lawyers and all citizens to be following what the Supreme Court Advisory Committee is doing, to be willing to participate by submitting comments to us when we, before or after we release some proposals, because it really does matter. It's a fairly massive step in the structure of our judiciary. We constantly are talking about changing the way that we do things. We almost never really do it. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for us to try to work together with all the relevant stakeholders, people that have strong views on one side or the other, do the best we can to start these courts out in a way that will be of service to the people of our state. And I think that's probably all I really need to say, unless there's something that somebody wanted to expect of me. No. All right.
Okay,
That's what I thought.
no comments for
Thank you.
Justice Young? Seeing none, we're going to move on, and I'll call on Director Pratt, the president of the Texas Young Lawyers Association, to give her report.
Thank you, Madam President. And I had no idea that I would be following a Supreme Court justice in giving my report until I saw the agenda. So it makes what I'm about to say next even more important to me. I am so honored to be here. And I'm honored to represent Texas Young Lawyers Association to all of you and give this report today. As I shared in May to the full board, music and my love of music is something that myself and my chair, Ashley Email, share. And so we settled on music as kind of this unifying theme for the year. And as I expressed to the full board in May and later in my article that ran in the Texas Bar Journal, I'm fully aware that I can't do this on my own. It's not a solo act for me. And I'm also aware that every member of my board has a unique part to play in achieving all of our goals, initiatives, projects, programs this year. And I'm working very hard to help them each play those roles to the best of their ability with the support of the rest of the TYLA board and State Bar of Texas, because it's very important to me. Now kind of moving on into all the updates, I'm going to try and go fast and furiously, but there's a lot that happens in the course of 3 months. We have close to 40 different projects, competitions, programs, initiatives to kind of undertake and complete this year. We're off to a great start. Our board actually has their meeting immediately following this one. So I'm going to hop in the car and drive to New Braunfels here once this meeting concludes. In regards to those projects, we've already selected some of our major vendors for some of the larger projects that we're undertaking. Most of the pamphlet updates and translations have already been started, and I expect by November, we will have a lot of those completed for you all. And then several of our member services oriented projects, things regarding outreach to local affiliates or to law students, are already been completed right on schedule or ahead of schedule for the course of the year. I have kind of tasked each committee this year with completing a project management sheet in an effort to kind of give State Bar Board kind of a visual of these are all the projects we're doing and this is kind of where they're lining up. I think a lot of times we just don't have enough time for me to go down the list of 40 projects. And so if I can give you guys something to look at, maybe that will kind of convey more of the information without taking more of the time. As of last week, another one of the things that I'm trying to do with my board this year is track hours, the volunteer hours that my board expends. And as of last week, as part of submitting their committee reports for our upcoming meeting, I'm happy to report the board has expended almost 900 volunteer hours towards TYLA projects and the work that they're doing. And I'm incredibly proud of the devotion that they show to kind of our public service and our outreach and all the things that we do to contribute to the mission of the State Bar of Texas. For my private practice attorneys in here, use your associate's billable hour rate and multiply that by 900 and see the costs that are saved to the State Bar of Texas through the volunteer hours of the young lawyers. So my travel schedule actually follows a lot of the leadership of the State Bar. So I kind of get to tag along with much wiser individuals. So I apologize that some of this is going to be overlap, but hopefully I can kind of shine some light on the young lawyer side of those meetings. First, we had our EC meeting. TYLA has its own EC and budget meeting before the year gets started. It's a great time for us to build relationships with each other as an EC, but then also we review, plan, and approve the budget for TYLA for the upcoming year. That was followed quickly by the local bar leaders conference, which I'd like to say was a huge success. And not only because I managed to get an entire room of lawyers to sing Piano Man, but it actually was a great opportunity for us to reconnect with a lot of our local bars. And in case you missed the reference, Piano Man, focus on a local bar, you know, I kind of made some overarching things of the importance of the local bar in making those individual connections with anybody that comes through the door, and how important that was in my legal practice career. And also, you know, being intentional in that space as bar leaders to make those connections and develop those relationships. What you may not know is TYLA actually undertakes a large part of the programming. We have an entire committee that's dedicated to putting together programming for the second day of that conference. And a lot of times we have new directors that have done nothing with TYLA that just jump right in and are willing to give presentations regarding our projects or ways we can help local bars across the state. And I'm extremely proud of the work that they did this last local bar leaders conference. We have plans in the work this next year to hopefully start doing that planning process earlier. So tail end of this bar year, in an effort that when the new people come on, a lot of the work has already been done and front loaded for everybody that's coming on, because local bar leaders comes up fast after annual meeting. And we want to give enough runway for us to extend invitations to our local bars to have individuals present. And we think we can do that more effectively if we do the planning in, say, March, April versus June, right after annual meeting. Next, we were followed by ABA annual meeting in Denver, Colorado. I was accompanied by Chair Ashley Email, immediate past President and Director Ritter, and Director Salick from our board. Director Salick actually was selected as an ABA YLD on the Rise recipient this year, so we got to be there and honor him. Director Ritter and myself were actually past recipients of that award, so it was nice to get that picture all together. TYLA and the projects that Director Ritter submitted from last year's projects and plans and initiatives nearly swept all awards in our category. We won 4 out of 5 of the awards from the ABA YLD, including the award for service to the public, service to the bar, the diversity award, and the comprehensive award. And then our Director Ritter's project, How Texas Courts Work, actually received the Outstanding Public Service Project Award from the American Bar Association Endowment. So we're super proud of all the work that Director Ritter did last year. And I just want to take point of personal privilege and recognize him for all those efforts, because those are not projects that I did, but he did an incredible job putting everything together and getting it in front of the ABA for their consideration. And I'd love for us to just recognize him right now. Thank you, Director Ritter, for all your hard work. Next, so after we got back from Denver, Colorado, I quickly had to hit the circuit for the law school orientations. I attended the orientation at SMU Dedman School of Law with State Bar of Texas past Chair Baruch. He did an excellent presentation. I've got to get better on my music references and quotes after following him and all his journey references. And then I also presented to Texas Tech University School of Law with President Cindy Tisdale, and it was warm reception from both law schools. August is a crazy time in the Pratt House because I'm married to an educator. He's an assistant principal, and I've got 3 school-age children. So you can imagine there's a lot of juggling when mom has to be out for orientations, but there's also meet the teachers. So I was happy to have the support of our president-elect, Hisham Masri. He actually attended orientation for Texas A&M School of Law. And then my chair, Ashley Email, attended the Thurgood Marshall School of Law orientation on TYLA's behalf. So a very fun report that I now get to give you guys is in regards to partnerships that TYLA is undertaking with different sections and committees of the State Bar. This is something that I think is just really unique to this year in a way that I've had individuals reach out to me that are serving as leadership in other capacities across the State Bar. And I feel like it just makes our projects and programs so much stronger when we have that kind of connection between the young lawyers and the State Bar committees and sections. So I wanted to just real quick go through the line of those that have already contacted me and are working directly with TYLA to make these projects successful. First, State Bar of Texas Professionalism Committee with its chair, Kathy Mills, has reached out to me in regards to several of our projects. And they have agreed to sponsor the Professionalism Award at TYLA's National Trial Competition. For those of you who may not be aware, TYLA, with help from ACTL, actually undertakes this massive mock trial competition across the nation every year. And then the finals are actually hosted here in Texas. And we have a committee that, man, they hit the ground running from the start of the bar year to the end of the bar year to make sure that project or that competition is successful. And last year, through the channels that would be, we kind of wanted to emphasize the need for professionalism and civility, even at the law school level. I mean, they're going into a court way, and we really wanted to highlight, hey, even at this level, we can be practicing professionalism and civility. So we were able to give a small cash prize to one of the teams that was voted on by their peers at the competition as being recipients of the award for professionalism and civility. And so this year, in an effort to kind of better promote and support that efforts, the Professionalism Committee has graciously voted to support that with a bigger cash prize for the law students that attend and receive that award at our competition in the spring. The Professionalism Committee has also come alongside of us to help with my podcast project regarding the Texas Lawyers Creed and getting speakers for that podcast to discuss why the Texas Lawyers Creed is so important to the practice of law here in Texas, and maybe share some war stories or maybe share some advice and wisdom to young lawyers regarding civility in the practice of law and what professionalism really means under kind of the context of the Texas Lawyers Creed. And then Professionalism Committee is also stepping up to help with our mentorship project. We're looking at some of the past resources that the State Bar of Texas put together for its Transition to Practice project and seeing how we can maybe refresh and breathe some new life into the mentoring that we see is so necessary with our young lawyers across the state. Our second partnership is actually with the Law Practice Management Committee. We're working to do a massive kind of overview of the 10-minute mentor project. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos that may or may not be relevant anymore or even up to date. They tend to actually look pretty dated when you pull up certain ones. So it's a lot of videos to watch. And they have really come alongside to help me kind of review, pull down what's not being watched, pull down anything that's, and then we want to migrate them over into more of a podcast audio only form. So maybe the longevity of the practice or longevity of the program can actually reach more people. I'm a remote lawyer and I commute to the office once a week. And so, turning on an audio in my car is actually really helpful. So maybe transitioning some of that in a way that it's more accessible to young lawyers across the state. GP solo and small firm section, State Bar of Texas, with Chair Julie, gosh, I didn't write down her last name, and Vice Chair Cole Shooter. Cole is actually a Lubbock attorney, knew I was president taking this role, and he called me and said, we want to do something. We saw you had this office in a flash program years and years ago, and it was instrumental in my practice. We would love to help you get that out again because we can't find the resources anywhere online. And I was like, hey, Cole, a year ago, I put that on my list of something that I wanted to do. And they have been so excited to help us with the project, not only in making sure we have enough flash drives to distribute once all of the items have been updated, but contributing their manpower to reviewing forms and resources for young lawyers that they can take a flash drive and start their solo or small firm business already ready to go. Here's what you need to know. Here's what you need to get out. And I've already talked with the Grievance Oversight Committee about putting information about the grievance on there. So it's yet another avenue that we have to kind of partner and make sure information is available to young lawyers. Northern District of Texas, I took a pro bono case last year with the Northern District, civil appointment. Biggest learning experience of my legal career to date. And thank goodness for good mentors and a good judge and an excellent pro se attorney with the judge's office. But it kind of opened my eyes to, man, we should probably do something here because the court system is usually desperate to get these civil appointments in place so somebody can actually receive justice. Helps the court, helps the plaintiff, also helps defense counsel to have somebody help navigate. And it's great trial experience in federal court for young lawyers. And so when Judge Hendricks Hurd was stepping into this role and I had this idea, man, he is all for it. His pro se staff attorney, Andy Howard, has been instrumental in helping us create this guide to federal civil appointments and trying to create some kind of network or availability for the court system in finding young lawyers that really just want the trial experience. And hey, here's a safety net of kind of the information you need to know when you get appointed or you want to take a pro bono case in federal court. Here's some information. And so they've been really helpful us into kind of, we already have an outline in place. I'm just floored that it goes so fast when you get the right people in the room. And then lastly, University Federal Credit Union and David Courageous, not a stranger to most of you in this room, they've committed to helping us with 3 of our projects involving financial literacy, identity theft, and the selling and purchase of vehicles. And so we're really grateful for that support. With the last kind of little bit, I know 2 of my articles that I wrote for the Texas Bar Journal were included in the materials. If you haven't picked up on it yet, each article will feature a song lyric, and then I will try and have a TYLA State Bar of Texas project focus that kind of ties into the sentiment of that song. For July, August, obviously it was the Vision Cast article, but September, I focused on mental health and suicide awareness because September is Suicide Awareness Month. Kind of sharing some of my personal story and kind of how my family had to walk through addiction with my sister-in-law and how that played out, and just kind of give the call to action for each of us to kind of step up in that place and just be present when people or families are struggling with those types of issues. And, that we can all kind of reach out in that space. And lastly, yes, I know, lastly, finally, every quarter, I'm going to be giving what I am calling the Mic Drop Awards. If you're not familiar with that terminology, it is kind of a expression of triumph, usually very boastful in nature. But what I like to say is my team, TYLA board, is not really about boasting in themselves. They just don't. And it's a great time for me to boast about them. So every quarter, I'll be giving 2 recipients the Mic Drop Award, one to a small city rep or small city director and one to a large city director. And, just to express my appreciation for the hard work that I see in them. In this quarter, Director Garrett Kautz from Lubbock will be receiving the Mic Drop Award for his work with State Moot Court, which is annual meeting, and planning the local bar leaders conference for the TYLA side of things, and finishing up our annual report from last year in communications transition and all the millions of other organizational efforts he's put forward to making his committee a success and helping our board. And then for our large city director, who actually was already mentioned because he spoke at Thurgood Marshall, Director Tim Adams, he's my large city award recipient. He has requested to be put into more leadership roles on our board, and he has done exceptional in every task that has been given him, even if he's never done it before. He's a very fast learner, even to the point of representing TYLA at the Educating Advocacy Teachers Conference, or EATS. Just learned that today, at Stetson Law in Florida. He was already there. We needed somebody. It was a quick phone call. Can you please? And y'all, advocacy, coaches sometimes are not the most kind when they're picking apart a competition and all the things we should do better. And Tim handled it with such grace and wisdom in a way that we are actually making changes to our program because he thought it was good feedback. So I'm very proud of all of the members of our board, specifically giving the shout out to Director Couts and Director Adams for their work this last quarter. And Madam President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Director Pratt. I don't know about you, but after the TYLA report, I'm always number one, exhausted, and number two, I don't do enough. So next on our agenda is from our General Counsel, Ross Fisher, who is on Zoom, but it's my understanding he has no report. So we're going to move on to our report from our Chief Legal Counsel, Chris Ritter. There you go. I was looking over there for you. Are we ready to go?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. And so at this time, it is now 12:04 p.m. and the State Bar Board of Directors Executive Committee will now recess the open meeting and reconvene in closed session as authorized by Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, for the purpose of consulting with legal counsel regarding Harrison versus State Bar of Texas Insurance Trust, Turnbull versus Commission for Lawyer Discipline et al., Washington versus State Bar of Texas et al., and Yan versus State Bar of Texas et al., and as authorized by Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, to deliberate regarding personnel matters, with the exception of board liaisons and section representatives, board members, all other individuals, including non-essential staff and other guests, need to please excuse themselves from the closed session. We will notify the public when we are 5 minutes out from returning to open session. Okay, it is now 12:18 PM and the open session of the Board of Directors Executive Committee meeting will now reconvene. During the closed session, only matters relating to consultation with legal counsel regarding the Harrison versus State Bar of Texas Insurance Trust, Turnbull versus Commission for Lawyer Discipline et al., Washington versus State Bar of Texas et al., and Yon versus State Bar of Texas et al. Litigations were discussed. No action was taken in closed session. At this time, I would like to announce that at 12:19 PM, we are now adjourned from this committee meeting.